Is an informational presentation by the Maritime Alliance. Greg Murphy is the newly appointed Executive Director of the Maritime Alliance, and he will talk about the goals and objectives of the Maritime Alliance on its efforts to promote sustainable, science-based ocean and water industries. Greg's presentation today was at the request of Controller Yee. And I think the Commission will see through this presentation some opportunities for collaboration and partnership with the State Lands Commission.
Tremendous.
Excellent. Well, Commission and Madam Controller, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, Ms. Ortega, Ms. Baker, and Ms. Lucchese, thank you for having me. My name is Greg Murphy. I'm the Executive Director of the Maritime Alliance. In respect for your time, I will keep my presentation short. I've cut it down to 30 minutes. That's a joke. So, I promise you that is not
all the time you need. Please.
So just real quick, we are two nonprofits. We have a 501c3 nonprofit educational foundation. We focus on workforce development, research, and community outreach. And we have a Maritime Alliance 501c6 industry association. We are the industry association for the largest BlueTech cluster in the United States, and that's based out of San Diego. We focus on economic development, business ecosystem development, and outreach. Together, we promote sustainable, science-based ocean and water industries. So these are the 16 sectors of what we call and define the blue economy. It includes your traditional maritime sectors like aquaculture and fishing, shipping, shipbuilding, and it also includes the non-traditional sectors, the more innovative sectors like desalination and clean water, ocean energy and minerals, maritime robotics, very large floating platforms. That's an interesting, especially in light of the last conversation too. Very large floating platforms. We think we're going to be seeing offshore ports in the next 20, 30, 40 years. This solves a lot of problems with regards to security, with regards to ballast water, with regards to a number of areas. We think there's a business case to be made for those kind of things. Aquaculture is very interesting. The state of California, as I understand 2011 numbers, had about $43 billion of agriculture business, 54 million only in aquaculture. That's a huge disparity. Right now, the United States imports about 91% of the seafood that we consume. That's worth $14 billion. So there's a huge disparity there as well. The Conservation International says that aquaculture is the best way to feed a growing population. Over the next, between now and 2050, our population is going to grow from 7 billion to 9 billion people. So we got to be planning for those kind of things, and I think the State Lands Commission is in a perfect opportunity to give us that opportunity. If you give us 20 square miles anywhere in the ocean where it makes sense, we'll give you a $3.3 billion aquaculture industry that supports 22,000 jobs. So we took a look at San Diego's blue economy, the economic impact, again, based on 2011 numbers. We found 1,400 companies that support 46,000 jobs, worth over $14 billion in direct annual sales. That's not indirect or induced. That is direct sales in San Diego County alone. These are good paying blue and white collar jobs, everywhere from manufacturing and your welders and pipe fitters to your PhD level people that are designing the latest and greatest in maritime technology, in maritime robotics, desalination, again, those 16 sectors that we focus on. And these are worldwide markets with high export potential. These are companies in our own backyard in San Diego that we had no idea existed because they're exporting to other parts of the world. They're not members of our Chamber of Commerce. They're not members of our regional economic development committees. So this really was a hidden economy. We're starting to bring light to that, and we're creating a national blue voice. We're partnering with other blue tech clusters around the country. You're talking the Gulf Coast, Boston, Seattle, and we're also partnering with international blue tech clusters. We held a conference back in November, and we had clusters from around the world, from the UK, from France, the southwest of France, from Ireland, from Canada. Portugal threatened to come, but they ran out of funding at the last minute. So this is an example of a underwater ROV that one of our member companies creates. I saw a slide in one of your staff's presentation earlier, made by the same company. So these inspect coral reefs, the underside of ships. They can do any number of things that you don't want to send a human into harm's way. They can go deeper. So we represent these type of companies. This is an array of your reverse osmosis membranes. It was mentioned earlier that Carlsbad opened up to 50 million gallons a day of fresh water That's going to supply about 10% of our water supply in San Diego County. That's incredible. That's water that we don't have to bring back from Northern California. Thank you very much. And then here's a photo of aquaculture off the coast. This is just one example of what an aquaculture farm could look like. Again, right now California is only doing 54 million. We could be doing so much more and exporting that product and supporting local jobs. And I would just add, just on the aquaculture component, if you compare the fact that we do 12 billion a year in livestock in California, that livestock requires a lot of land and requires a lot of fresh water. Aquaculture requires zero land and zero fresh water. So especially in this era of drought, we got to be looking at aquaculture.
Where is that, by the way? Where is this? Do you know where this?
Yeah, I got it off the internet. It's a stolen photo.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. United States. I got it.
I knew you were going to ask the tough questions, Lieutenant Governor.
I know. Piercing question. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for embarrassing me in front of my mom. So this is a photo of a recently opened fisherman's market that opened up in San Diego. The first day, this was back in August 2014. The first day it was open, we had over 1,000 people waiting in line to buy fresh fish directly from commercial fishermen. Speaker Tony Atkins carried a bill for us. The Pacific to Plate, it was a huge success, unanimous support through the legislature, and the governor signed it, thankfully. On the bottom left, you'll see former Port Commissioner Bob Nelson, and my old boss, County Supervisor Greg Cox, and then on the bottom right, a local commercial fisherman holding a yellowfin tuna. And this is a great opportunity. This was a momentous occasion for our commercial fishing fleet. San Diego County was long regarded as the tuna capital of the world. That since has declined a little bit, but they're coming back because people are understanding that we ought to not be importing seafood from around the world. We should be supporting our local fishery because the carbon footprint of the seafood that we consume, traveling all over, is a huge drag on our economy, a drag on our environment, and we could be supporting commercial fishermen. So we, the Maritime Alliance, put forward a BlueTech vision for San Diego County, which is unanimously supported by our County Board of Supervisors, by our San Diego City Council, with the leadership of Supervisor Greg Cox, Mayor Kevin Faulkner, and Council President Sherry Leitner. It acknowledges our maritime heritage, it acknowledges the importance of the U.S. military and our oceanographic research institutes, and it called for the creation of a BlueTech incubator so we can incubate those type of technologies that are going to solve a lot of the world's problems. Our unofficial tagline for that incubator for startup companies is, instead of importing the world's problems like sea level rise and climate change and ocean acidification, you name it, we ought to be finding the solutions and exporting those and make California the leader and not the follower. It also calls for the creation of multiple centers of excellence, and it turns our collective attention to the ocean. We are not paying enough attention to the ocean, both environmentally and economically, and there's a huge opportunity there that I think the State Lands Commission can play a leadership role in. So here's a press release of the aforementioned BlueTech vision from Mayor Faulkner and Supervisor Cox. So that brings up the question, what are we going to do with all these competing ocean uses? We've got to be focused on not only creating economic development opportunities, but protecting natural resources. So how do we do that? Well, pretty simple, but complex in implementation, but marine spatial planning. People are familiar with land use planning, familiar with zoning ordinances, and that kind of thing. Marine spatial planning is the same type of principles, but applied to the ocean environment. So we want to call for comprehensive, iterative, and inclusive planning of our ocean and waterways. You've got to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be competing. You're going to have competing ocean uses, and it's going to be a mess. Back in 2010, President Obama created the first ever national ocean policy, which called for marine spatial planning on a regional level. Unfortunately, on the West Coast, it was all included into one regional planning body, which is very cumbersome, very hard to manage. We think that we ought to be doing marine spatial planning on a sub-regional level, create that model, and then apply that to the rest of the state of California. So I'll just leave you with a couple of dates. In 1806, Lewis and Clark made it to the mouth of the Columbia River. They explored the Great West of the United States, but they stopped. They didn't go into the Pacific Ocean. Then in 1983, President Ronald Reagan established the United States exclusive economic zone out to 200 miles. That single action effectively doubled the size of the United States. We have more national parks in the ocean than we have on land, and people don't know that. And then, like I said, in 2010, President Barack Obama established a national ocean policy. So what's going to happen in 2016? I don't have the answer. I'm looking at you. We want to see marine spatial planning, of course, on a statewide level, but we want to create the model in San Diego. We have the stakeholder groups. We work very well with the environmental community, with the industry. We are the industry, with the military. Again, San Diego is the largest concentration of military personnel in the world. So we have those relationships. We can do that, and we want your support. And I'll thank you for your time. That's a picture of me and my wife. We just got married in September. Thank you. And I would, if I may, just invite up from the Port of San Diego, their Director of Government and Civic Relations, Job Nelson. He is not only a great collaborator of mine, we also decided to wear the same costume today for you.
Commissioners, Jennifer, thank you. I know you're in the midst of a very busy meeting today. For the record, my name is Job Nelson. I'm the Director of Government and Civic Relations for the Port of San Diego. I'm happy to be here today because the Port, like the State Lands Commission, has been undergoing a comprehensive planning effort. As we were looking 40 years or 50 years out, we were looking more than 5, we're looking 50, and we realized the lenses that we had relied upon were not going to be adequate for that effort. As global population continues to grow and environmental challenges manifest themselves more fully, there's going to be increasing pressure on coastal and ocean resources. Greg mentioned a few: rising demands for minerals and energy, decline of fish stocks, climate change and acidification, sea level rise. Those are just a few of the challenges that we are going to face, but they're also opportunities. What makes California great is we are the best in the world about being smart and about being innovative. We take advantage of these opportunities and kind of push off the challenges, but that only happens best with proper planning. So, marine spatial planning. What are the short-term benefits of a planning effort? I would argue, one, better management of the resource. Given the expanding nature of the BlueTech cluster, there is an increasing desire to be testing technologies out in the water. Combine that with the Navy, in San Diego, combine that with the Navy, the Port, California's largest sport fishing fleet, and significant maritime presence, and you can see that coordination becomes an increasing challenge, and we need to be able to address that in the years to come as more and more folks want to be out in the water. 2, security. As we have enacted greater security measures around the Bay, we now have problems popping up out in the Pacific. We have derelict vessels breaking loose and washing ashore. We have illegal lobster fishing. We even have smuggling that's going on out there. And it puts increasing pressure on our harbor police, Coast Guard, and the state's resources. 3, environmental benefits of planning. Addressing sea level rise, water quality, and the possibility of creating habitat are just 3 of the things that we could look at as we begin to marine spatially plan the area. And last, I would say economic opportunities. BlueTech, pharmaceuticals, R&D, renewable energy are just a few of the options if we create the structures to plan for and facilitate for the future. Planning will decide whether the Pacific is the center of opportunity or a source of threats, and we would like to continue to partner with the State Lands Commission, with the Maritime Alliance, and others as we begin to look at what we do out in the Pacific in the years to come. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Jennifer, just great presentation. I enjoyed it, and important reminder from an economic development frame as well, and a lot of exciting opportunities. I mean, it's extraordinary how, and I say this with respect, low the bar is in terms of what we've actually accomplished and what we're capable of doing. That said, on the marine spatial planning side, I mean, I know we've made a lot of progress. At least we have a lot of discussions around this over the last number of years. Anything you want to add to that in terms of that emphasis here?
Well, the one thing I would like to add is the State Lands Commission has historically been reactive. We receive applications, staff processes those, and we present them to the Commission. It's a very kind of reactive scenario. I think what the opportunities that marine spatial planning and the other partnerships that Job and Greg were talking about really could put the State Lands Commission more in a proactive planning role for the lands under our jurisdiction in a very, I think, responsible way, particularly with our public trust responsibilities and our authorities in terms of balancing all the different needs, competing needs, and purposes to which those lands should or could be put to.
Right. And I imagine it's an emphasis on the strategic plan, too, in terms of the mapping and the technology and the transparency as it relates to that. But thank you for bringing this item up. Yes. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. What I want to entertain is to see whether we might want to direct staff to look at the role of the Commission in this effort. I think there's just so many opportunities associated with this, and it's exciting. But obviously our authority and our ability to partner with the Port of San Diego is one where we've got unique opportunities to really be an integral part of this planning process. And so what I'd like to suggest is to see whether staff can come back with a report to us at our February commission meeting, just to talk about how we can move forward together on this initiative. And I just have to thank the local elected officials in San Diego for being so forward-thinking on this and coming together really with a lot of energy already put into the local discussions about what the potential opportunities are. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if the commissioners are agreeable, I'd like to see what the next steps forward could look like.
I'm with you, yeah. No, I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And the one last thing I'd like to add is, particularly in San Diego and developing some sort of framework with how to move forward on a partnership like this, it's really taking advantage of the local connections that the Port of San Diego has established and fostered through many decades with the local businesses, the maritime industry, environmental stakeholders, and the local communities and the military in that area. That, coupled with the State Lands Commission's expertise and experience from a statewide perspective, I think there's a lot of opportunities there to create a really meaningful framework for hopefully a model approach to this.
Tremendous.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to subsequent conversations.
Yes.
Well done, guys.
Excellent.
It's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you for being up here.